computers, they'll figure it out.
Okay, great. So I believe.
Yeah, you're doing it.
Great. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, great. All right, so our two presenters today, our first presenter, this workshop is called Disability as Divine, and our presenter is Amy Kenny. Dr. Amy Kenny is a disabled scholar and a Shakespeare lecturer who absolutely hates Hamlet. Her work has been featured in HuffPost, Teen Vogue, The Mighty, and Sojourners, as well as peer-reviewed academic journals and books. Her book, My Body is Not a Prayer Request, Disability Justice in the Church, comes out in May of 2022. Also featured in this workshop is lovely artist Elyse Horn. Elyse is a disability theologian pursuing her MDiv at Princeton Theological Seminary. Her work seeks to put disabled people at the center, challenging the predominant narrative that leaves disabled people out of the conversation. Her work includes both academic and creative expressions of disabled joy and pride, history, joy, and pride. Just a couple reminders as we go into this workshop. Per BU policy, we do ask that unless you're taking a drink of some or something, please leave your masks on. And if at any point anybody on Zoom can't hear us or can't see us or the cart services stop, please send a chat and we will stop until those things are rectified. Does anyone have any questions before we get started? No? All right, Dr. Kenny, take it away.
Great. Well, thank you so much. Can everyone hear me? Is the audio coming through both in person and on Zoom? Okay, great. All right. I'll start with an image description. I'm a white woman in my 30s. I have shoulder length, straight blonde hair, and I'm wearing a black blouse with neon dinosaurs on it. To show you I'm fun. And I'm sitting in my living room / kitchen / office in my home here in California on Tongva land. Joining me at my feet and potentially in the background is my husky, Jazz. So she knows she's fabulous and she may make an appearance at some point. So I want to start just by normalizing however you have entered this space. If you are low on spoons, if you're high on emotional overwhelm, if you are full on delicious food, if your camera's on or your camera's off, however you're joining us, I'm glad you're here. And I just want to acknowledge again, as we so helpfully had in the beginning of this conference, that we're not just brains or robots here to produce, but we are bodies, we are embodied, and we each come with our own needs and our own gifts, and all of those are worthy of access and care. So I want to start us off with that reminder because we're actually going to be using our body minds together as we co-create today. And we're going to be thinking about what it means for disability to be divine and for the divine to be disabled. So I'm going to share some of my own experiences with this before inviting us to co-create in some form. This can be some sort of visual art, collage, some sort of poetry, movement, whatever feels inviting to you. And some of us are already thinking, ooh, I'm not an artist, but I just encourage you to think about how art isn't about the product, but it's about the process. And just invite you to think about how if we believe, as I do, that we are made in the image of a creator who has created everything from the kangaroo to the ocean, think about how we are instilled with that kind of creativity as we co-create together today. So just give you that as kind of an invitation and hopefully a way to silence some of those voices of negativity that always come up when we're in spaces that art is involved. So I invite us just to listen to our bodies. Maybe as I'm sharing just a story to get us started, maybe you want to close your eyes, maybe you want to rest your gaze on something. Maybe it feels comfortable to you to kind of just become aware of your breath or whatever is serving to you to really Be aware of your body, be aware of the space that you're in, and just think about what parts of this story you can relate to, what parts maybe resonate with you, and what can invite you to create something about disability and divinity. The woman next to me is sobbing. The man across the aisle is jumping up and down as if he's about to go a few rounds in a boxing ring, despite his ripped skinny jeans. No one dares to make eye contact with me, but everyone in the congregation glances my way, making sure I hear the promises the lyrics hold for me. We're at the part of the song that exclaims there'll be no lame in heaven, because in Jesus's presence we'll be healed and whole. Non-disabled folks couldn't be happier. It's a sea of buffalo plaid arms raised high in the air. Never mind the fact that I don't feel broken or incomplete. Everyone else is too wrapped up in my erasure to notice. Do you realize Jesus's body will be the only one that isn't perfect in heaven? The preacher starts. I'm not sure what qualifies him to make such a proclamation. Has he been to heaven? What is a perfect body anyway? But no one else seems to question it. Most folks in the crimson-backed pews cheer for this claim, as though someone just announced we're each going home with a brand new Mercedes. Instead of Oprah shouting, "You get a car," it's a preacher screeching, "You get a perfect body, and you get a perfect body," to each of us in turn. As if the lack of perfect bodies is the predominant thing wrong with our current world. I'd be more excited that no one hungers or thirsts in new creation, especially since in our wealthy nation, 1 in 6 children don't know where their next meal comes from. But I guess my disabled body would be the focus of your praise if you were just trying to distract yourself from actually doing something about poverty. We have enough food to prevent people dying from hunger. We just don't want to share it. One thing the preacher said that resonates with me: Jesus triumphed over death and retained the scars of crucifixion. God is disabled, and who's to say we should be any different? When Daniel visits the clouds of heaven, he describes, the throne was fiery flames, and its wheels burned fire. Daniel 7:9. A chair with wheels sounds a lot like a wheelchair to me, and one that gives new meaning to burning rubber. Maybe that's something we should sing about. Cue the swelling acoustic guitar music. Conveniently, the animated chorus forgets that God's throne is a fiery wheelchair when they buzz about heaven. I'm told this is a metaphor, not to take things so literally. But if anyone bothered to ask me, they would know that when I picture an idyllic world, I picture ramps. How else would my upgraded, flaming wheelchair get around? Driving home from the service, the palm fronds passed by in a blur as I wondered to myself, not for the first time, what church would be like if pastors understood God in the way that I do, as disabled. What if we could imagine mobility devices as similar to the one God uses to reign? Turns out it's not just me and Daniel picturing God in a wheelchair. Ezekiel describes God as a radiant fire with a massive mobility device that is lifted by 4 angels with fused legs and colossal wheels. The wheels encase wheels that glisten like topaz, Ezekiel 1:15-21. God uses a fiery, shimmering, turquoise wheelchair to get around, and so should I. My wheels liberate me and allow me to operate in tandem with my mobility scooter, Diana. Her tires grip the pavement, absorbing the shockwaves that my legs would otherwise have to endure. I lean into her as we go around a corner, like water gently caressing the riverbank as it flows. I feel the texture of the earth, the rhythm of the cement. I hear the symphony of vibrations as we drift from concrete to cobblestone. My physicality does not stop at the tip of my toes or the crown of my head. It extends to my cobalt chair, able to transport me to new worlds. Just like Ezekiel's vision, I am fused with these wheels that are my ticket to freedom. I am body, wheel, and fire. So now I'd like to turn to you. How do you imagine the divine as disabled? How can you imagine disability as divine? There's no right or wrong. There's simply an invitation to think about this question, and I'll put it in the chat for us as well. So you might think about the communication styles that God uses, whether it be some sort of, any type of communication that you experience, whether in nature or in humanity, or through some sort of prayer life or meditation life that you may have. You might think about ways you've experienced love, acceptance, access intimacy. The divine is wherever you feel safe, adored, cherished fully as yourself. So I just remind us again that this process of co-creating isn't about what we produce, but about being open to the invitation and the process. So to inspire us and kind of start us off, Elyse is going to share some examples of disability as divine in art.
Thank you so much, Dr. Amy Kennedy. I really was inspired by what you said, and I think your practice of seeing art as both something that you can express yourself and perfect in the way that God sees it and God wants us to see it was great. And I think that was kind of the motivation for me in creating the 4 pieces that I'm going to show you all in a moment. And for me, I just really wanted to capture art as an expression of disabled joy. And I typically wouldn't consider myself an artist, but just through this process, giving myself the freedom of expression has really done more for me than chasing ideals of perfection and artistic rendering everyone. So I have 4 paintings, and I'll share them with you all over the course of the session. But in the interest of time, I will just give us 2 examples to kind of give us an inspiration. So the first one is that it's Jesus, brown Jesus, because white Jesus is effectively dead. And Jesus is wearing clothes because I was not comfortable with doing a naked Jesus yet. Maybe next time. And then you can't see, but I purposely put scar, like Jesus' scar. So here's the scar on his side right here. And then on his hands and his feet, there are little holes to mark where he was crucified. And it was just interesting in my process. I was looking for inspiration, and I haven't really seen portrayals of Jesus as post-resurrection Jesus as crucified. So I think that plays into our portrayal of Jesus as like this perfect embodiment, even though we know from the Gospels that like Jesus still carries his scars from the resurrection. And then in the corner here, I have the 3 crosses symbolizing that Jesus died and was resurrected. And then our second one, because my 4 paintings are basically loosely based on the 4 servant songs of Israel, this is a painting of, a painting of Israel. And it's, like you can see, it is an outline. So I just kind of sketched it. So again, not chasing artistic perfection, but chasing artistic expression. And this one is really important to me because based on the 4 servant songs of Israel, they understand the suffering servant to be Israel. So kind of going as a testament to the original purpose of the suffering servant. So those are 2 examples, and I'll share the rest of them a little bit later and expand more. But I'm so excited to co-create with you all in this session. And thank you, Dr. Kenny, for giving me the space to do so.
Thank you, Elyse. So hopefully through our words and those wonderful images and just whatever is stirring in your body mind, hopefully you are now thinking about what you can co-create. So we'll spend about 25 minutes or so, grab a pen, paper, markers, move your body, listen to the birds, watch the trees dance in the wind, put on some music for yourself, whatever feels inviting and kind of restful and restorative to you. And as we said before, there's no right or wrong. It's just the question that we're responding to is, how can we imagine the divine as disabled? And how can you imagine disability as divine?
All right, come grab some supplies if you'd like. We have paper and markers and scissors and glue and magazines if you'd like to make a collage.
Oh my goodness. Making a divine mess.
Take a picture of all this supply. Is that gonna be your
Right.
apartment?
There you go. She's my divine
I mean-
inspiration.
Honestly.
Oh, can you throw me a glue stick?
A glue stick?
Yeah.
Of course.
This white one's a little pretty, so I should probably use it.
There you go. It's
Coming right at me. Yes, thank you. These real quick.
Yeah.
I'm gonna cut like a half sheet out of those of these, and I don't want to. All right.
What thing do they have with your?
This one?
Are you gonna use it?
No, I was gonna leave it in. I just need 2 shades of green. I think.
Vision already.
Oh, can you pass me that other green?
Yeah, for sure.
Look at that.
Yes.
Awesome. Yeah. Yes.
Should I try to draw Jesus naked?
Maybe next time.
That was so good. That was so good.
Maybe next time.
I was gonna be my one quote.
If it's helpful for you guys, here's the question. If you need to see it again.
Thank you.
for this decision.
Of
because I'm not
course.
using awesome things. I'm trying to make a career, but I'm not doing it. Not that good.
So we'll just spend about 5 more minutes co-creating. It doesn't have to be finished. We're practicing process, not product. And we're eschewing that kind of notion that we have to produce and instead celebrating that we all have creativity and needs and gifts that can be shared with the community. So in about 5 minutes, we'll come back together and share what we've created together.
You can use them, I don't need them anymore.
right, so I am going to bring us back together, but feel free to keep co-creating as you listen to Elyse share. So we're going to move to a time of sharing and reflection for our final 15 minutes. And we just want to make sure that there's no comparison here. There's only co-flourishing. It can be really easy when we're showing, what we made, to kind of think about our most tender and vulnerable selves, feeling insecure at how skilled everyone else is. And we, of course, want to practice the fact that disability culture emphasizes interdependence and co-flourishing. There's no competition, only community. So we're not putting ourselves or our co-creations down. We are instead just reflecting on what this experience was like to think about disability as divine. So if that for you means showing something that you started creating or created during this time, wonderful. Maybe for you, it means sharing the kind of emotions that came up or some of the feelings that resonated, either from sharing my story or from trying to co-create yourself. So Elyse is going to share some of her art with us, and then it'll be open for everyone else.
Yes. So I hope that you all had a great time co-creating in whatever expression and format that felt the most life-giving and freeing to you. I know that I enjoyed my time as a space of centering and self-reflection and just channeling the disabled joy. So back to my paintings. Like I said, I created 4 paintings loosely based on the suffering servant in Isaiah, because I know that it's a foundational disability theology text, and I really wanted to explore what does that mean for me and my identity. And so the 3rd painting that I created, there's this guy in a wheelchair. He purposely looks like this. I kind of tried to style it in kind of a Cubanist, Pablo Picasso kind of way, to kind of hint at the ways in which disability claims the titles of disfigurement and ugliness and things that have been used to discriminate against us and to push us into isolation and institutions, but really to say no, this is embodiment and this is good embodiment, and this is embodiment worth portraying and worth honoring in artwork. And I purposely had him be in a wheelchair just to as Dr. Kennedy said, that to know for the knowledge for disabled people, mobility devices such as wheelchairs are pieces of freedom and expression and an extension of one's body. And we resist the narrative that wheelchairs and other mobility devices confine us and limit us. So I also wanted to lift that up in this painting. And then my last painting, I admit I'm a little bit biased. It's kind of my favorite for me. It is words, and this just goes to show the various pieces of artistic expression that one can have. These words, it's the words, only those with underlying conditions will die, over and over again. And as you can see from a distance, it looks kind of pretty. You don't really know what it says, but it looks kind of pretty. And one of the reasons why I love it is because I'm sure, as you all have heard, from the beginning of the pandemic, this is something, only those with underlying conditions was something that I heard, and family members would say. I would hear it on the news all of the time. And people didn't realize they were promoting eugenics, and they were promoting this phrase that really harms disabled people and people of other marginalized identities, which this is why I really wanted to capture this, because both the repetition of only those with underlying conditions will die, and the damage that it does to people who have underlying conditions, but also just how on the outset people are oh, it's comforting, that doesn't apply to me, but then once you start to think about it, it's actually really insidious, even if it doesn't appear to be so. And so yeah, I just wanted to show you all that, and then I'm going to share my screen for a minute. Here we go. So here's all 4 of them together. So here's Jesus is the suffering servant with the scars of his embodiment. Here's Israel to be a testament to the Jewish understanding of the suffering servant as Israel. And then here's the guy in the wheelchair, styled after Pablo Picasso, kind of getting in the liberation lens. And then here is the repetition of the words, only those with underlying conditions will die, in a bunch of different colors. So I just wanted to share that with you all so that you can see them as a set, because that was my intention. I'll leave them up for a second so that you can look at them, or if you want to take a picture, you can, but also like, you don't have to, it's cool. Okay, cool, awesome. So yeah, thank you so much, all of you, for letting me share. And I'm so excited to hear all the things and the ways that you have co-created in this space.
You guys can hear us, right? As long as we speak up. So Dr. Kenny, do you just want people to, as they feel so moved?
Yeah, I'm not going to call on people and kind of name and shame. So if you would like to share with us, excellent. And that can be in the chat. That can be if you want to share with your voice, that can be on video or off, however is most inviting to your body mind.
For those on Zoom, if you would like to share anonymously, I am also connected to Zoom on my personal computer. So you're welcome to send a personal chat to Chloe.
Well, I'll start because as an instructor, I've done the victim method and it's never fun. So I love collage. Collage is something I've done since I was little. My journals are like littered with hilarious Delia's catalogs from the 90s. And I was really inspired. So here's it's a bunch of rainbow colors. Here, do you want to, Chloe, can you put that closer? I was a bunch of rainbow colors, some words, some wheels, just because I was really trying to find images that were corresponding to everything I've heard today. This was just a beautiful and unexpected way to do something I love to do and reflect on just a really full day, a rich day already. And I was thinking a lot about, I'm Catholic by tradition, so I was thinking a lot about iconography and how we use halo effects and colors and evocative honorifics in aesthetics in the Catholic Church to uplift certain visions of God and visions of perfection and visions of, if we can't put it into words, what should it look like? And I think that while that's a beautiful impetus, it often replicates the same thing that we speak, like what Dr. Kenny was talking about in the sermon. And so I was thinking about getting really beyond that straight up iconography and just using like color and movement, because I think the like talk about divinity for me today in Dr. Kenny's question has been very feeling and movement based, not like a worded academic response. I don't have those words, but I have color.
Yeah.
And so for some reason, that's where I went and just kind of let it go. So yeah, that's what I was up to over here.
We have about 6 minutes, so we have time for probably a couple more. We have one in the chat.
Can you read it so Part will get it?
Yeah, it says, I was drawn toward music. This is from Ron Padron. It says, I was drawn toward music, so decided to curate a playlist of songs that spoke to me about my disability. What I found is that I was gravitating towards songs about suffering or being a victim, which definitely have their places in processing our emotions, but I struggled to find songs I listened to in order to feel seen, uplifted, or okay as I am. Word and music are important to me, and I'm sitting with this realization.
I'll share. Okay, my collage was kind of inspired by Dr. Betcher's talk. I don't know if you can see.
Oh, nice.
See it. Here, can we hold that up? Thank you. So I was focusing a lot on like nature imagery and like feeling alive, and that feeling or that sense of veritas, like greening power. I was laughing because in one of the magazines, one of the reviews, there was like a page of reviews for National Park, and one of the reviews said more handicap facilities. So I like, oh my gosh. I was, yep, so I put that on my collage. Yeah, and then the wandering wilderness and forgotten forest were kind of like the key words that I pulled that I found were like, I'm thinking about the relationship between my body and creation in a new way after Dr. Betcher's talk. So that's what I kind of was creating with in this. Yeah.
Thank you.
I can share.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. It's like one color, so it's very hard to see. I went with the color palette one because it makes me think of like humans, and we're all just like one. So the shade is kind of, the color palette is very just like we are one. And on the edges it says Alleluia, and I often think about how like language sometimes isn't included, and I work with a lot of students whose families don't speak English and how that becomes a disability for them engaging with community. But then I drew different depictions of like the senses and how those are like very just like visible things that we see and understand, but the dots are connected to the stars, which are the unseen revelations. So that we see a lot, but we just get the surface, but that underneath with the stars and the things that we learn from each other in connection is really where revelation comes from. So yeah.
I can share briefly. My name is Katie, and I was thinking also a lot about entanglement and enmeshment, and so I drew a whole bunch of rainbow shapes, and I had watercolor pencils at home, so just thinking about like fluidity and the sort of messiness and playfulness that comes with that medium.
Well, thank you so much, everyone, for sharing. I want to honor our time, and we only have about a minute left, so I'll just say a few closing things. I really respect the courage and vulnerability that it took to create together and then to share and reflect on those co-creations. I know that can be awkward, and some of us aren't used to it in a kind of conference space. So I just am really grateful that everyone was able to do that and practice what it means to value disability in a space like this together. I'll just invite us to think about disability as divine as we leave today as well, and start to notice it everywhere. So the story I shared about my wheelchair being like God's throne is one example, but we can also see the kind of crookedness and jaggedness that my body is sometimes called. We can see that throughout creation: the bumpy trunks of redwoods, the snaky branches of elm trees, the ragged leaves of maple leaves. So just an invitation to start to notice how what we might consider disability in bodies is part of the beautiful diversity of creation. And it's an invitation for us to think about how disability is divine and how the divine is disabled. Disabled people are the most creative people I know, because we live in a world that is not built for us. Disabled people have come up with everything from texting to touch screens to the potato peeler to Snuggies. So we are innovators and creators, and our body minds are divine. So I just kind of leave us with that invitation and reminder to start to notice how disability is divine all around us. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Listening me. Next year.
Yeah, sure.
So good.